Hi everyone, it's Gina Pongetti Angeletti, co-owner of Achieve Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine, where we spend a lot of time doing performing arts medicine specialization, including dance, gymnastics, figure skating, performing arts, circus arts, tumbling, trampoline, Broadway shows, musicals, and performance in general. One of the common things that we're finding when people are off of performance is that they're not getting as many repetitions of leaps and everything else, and people are concerned that they're going to be losing their front leg height or their extension height of their leg. Their hip flexors are starting to cramp, and they're not doing as much hip flexor strengthening. So as much as flexibility of the hip flexor is very important, which we'll touch on in a different video as well, strengthening is something that I want to show you that is very easy to do at home on your own, especially with men's gymnastics and women's gymnastics as well. Men really do need hip flexor strength, especially for P-bars and rings, but mostly for pommels, of course. And women, of course, for every dance move, as well as things like popping off the vault into Yurchenko pikes and everything, especially, you know, leg held turns, wolf turns. So we're going to work on just a really quick video on some hip strengthening. To start out today, it's just a plain old TheraBand, and if you need one, feel free to let us know and we can always pop one out to the car for you. So when you put the band around your ankles, one of the easiest things to understand is that we can strengthen a muscle within its entire range of motion, which we're going to do, but you can also strengthen a muscle in a smaller range of motion, but with resistance. Obviously, the further that you stretch the band out, the more that the resistance will increase, and the higher that your leg as a human goes, the harder it is. So both curves go up at the same time, so it becomes exponentially difficult pretty quickly. So you're just gonna stand very simply, and you can have your hands out to the side, you can have them on your hips, or however you would like. This is great for Irish dance as well, is making sure that we're just gonna lift. We're gonna lift as high as we can and lower, lift and lower. You're working balance on your lower leg. You don't want anything to be happening in your body. Your breastbone and your pubic bone need to be completely solid, and you can even put your hands there to make sure that they're not moving and that you're not actually trying to lift your leg, but you're actually just doing leg lifts. Now, you can go slow up and slow down. Sorry. You can go slow up and hold at the top. You can come down, you can hold your balance, and you can do pulses just at the top, or you can do pulses at the bottom, or you can do big, fast kicks and returns. But we want to work on the fact that it's our hip flexor that's working and nothing else. So now we're gonna go down to the ground, and we're gonna do some basic exercises for both strength and endurance. So we're gonna work on our hip flexors, and let's talk about kind of where they are. So your psoas starts all the way at your T10, T12, all the way down to your L5. It's on the back part, it starts at your spine, but the front part of your spine, and comes forward. Hip flexors are all the way up, almost underneath your ribs. They come down into this soft area here, and then they join. Of course, you have your iliacus and your psoas that come together. Then they come down into your legs and join your quads. Your quads are your rectus femoris and then your vastus intermedius, the middle, then the lateralis and the medialis. But what we are more concerned about is making sure that when our hip flexors are activating, that we're not arching our back or doing any sort of spine damage, and that our spine is solid when we're activating them. So what we would like to do, and the easiest way to understand that there are two joint hip flexors that go all the way from your tib tube all the way up, is as soon as you bend your knee, everything becomes exponentially easier. So when you're laying down and you're working on hip flexor strength, you can start laying down as easy as holding isometrically and doing our marches, like our transverse abdominis video shows. You can raise and lower your leg, trying to make sure that your back stays completely flat. You can do so and try to go quickly. You can do so in turnout. You can do so with quick, almost battement type kicks. You can also come up and you can go ins and outs and ups and downs, right? So now we're going to start to engage our abs, and we're actually just going to try to balance. This is abs and hip flexors. More abs right now, of course, and you can actually start to do taps with your heels, which work your hip flexors, but they make your abs work at the same time. You can actually straighten one leg out, straighten the other leg out. You can straighten both out and try to hold. You can lower down and come back up again, and then if you want to only do the pike up portion of it, you can literally lay and do V-ups where you're actually pulling in. You can come up and do small ones. You can hold out and you can do crossovers and turnout, crossovers straight, big scissors, or even just scissors up and down. And all of those are working your hip flexors while working your abs at the same time. Now, one of the things that I see in gyms all the time, and especially in sports teams, less performing arts but more mainstream sports, is that people will lay down, they'll hold on to somebody's legs, and they'll drop their legs down and raise them up again. Most people, if you were to ask them to keep their back flat, you have to watch our blood pressure cuff video, which is really important to this as well, can't even lower their legs a little bit or lower one leg all the way and bring it back up again without either being unable to do so, number one, arching their back, number two, or feeling a pop in their hip flexor, which most of the time means that their pubic bone and breastbone isn't staying isometrically tight. So when you're here and someone's slamming your legs down, look at where my back rises, and coming back up again, we are using and strengthening those hip flexors, but we're doing so at the expense of making sure that our back is arching, which means that we're not keeping our abs tight at the same time, which is what protects our spine. So after doing all those hip flexor exercises, now what we're going to do is we're going to advance to standing, and I'm going to show you how to work your free leg in both turnout and neutral and making sure that it stays really strong and has good endurance. So now we're going to work the hip flexor in a standing position. You can do this against a wall, and if you're against a wall, you want to have a little bit of space for your glutes so you can move yourself about 1/2 of a shoe length away. Now when you're against a wall, you want to make sure that your back is completely flat and that you're tight up against the wall. So again, when you lift your hip flexor, you're not arching your back to lift. I want you to do this with me because it's really interesting to see. When you lift your leg up in the air and you allow yourself to arch your back, you can put a good amount of pressure and you feel like you can get it higher. And if you're actually activating your abs, it is more difficult to get it as high, but it actually creates more strength because you're creating a more solid base, again, between your breastbone and your pubic bone, your transverse abdominis. You're creating that solid structure so that your hip flexors have an anchor point in order to kick. So I go into gymnastics gyms and dance studios throughout the country, and we do evaluations on why they're having low back pain, why they're unable to hold their leg up high from an endurance perspective, artistically, why their bodies aren't shaped properly with their free leg in the air, especially figure skaters, but we're really concerned about tendonitis and overuse. So in working something, you don't want to work it too much in order to create the tendonitis, but you need to make it strong enough to hold your legs up. So let's go through some sports, right? Every time a figure skater jumps, their hip flexors need to be strong, they need to pick into the ground, but they also need to have their legs strong in order to hold it up into a free position. From a gymnastics perspective, again, pommel horse, for women's gymnastics, anything artistic, but also high bar to low bar things, kips and the basic glide. If we're going into Irish dance, of course, anything that involves a free leg that's in the air, or if your leg is up free and you're bringing your bottom leg to it, we need to make sure that in order to kick your leg up, that we're not rocking and bending, and that this is completely stable, using this to create a force in your hip flexor. Of course, ballet or traditional dancing, we need to make sure that we can hold our leg up, not only to do obviously lifting and holding exercises, but also in leaping and pirouetting and everything else. So I'm sure I forgot some sports in the performing arts realm, but at least it's a good start. So as we're standing, we go into the gyms and we have people say, how long can you hold your leg up at a free position? Most of the kids say, well, I can hold it up, and they go like this. And their bent top leg, they turn in, they buckle their bottom leg, and they hold on to something. And it's not really testing anything because we can't repeat it and we can't know if they're doing it properly. And you don't want anybody doing leaps in anything that looks like this, or back walkovers where they're frumping down or buckling on their bottom knee. So when you're standing, we can work on having a bent knee and just work on activating and working the same muscles at the same time. So you want the bottom leg to work on straightening as the top hip flexor works. So you can start bent and then you can come up straight. And this glute works as well. You tighten your glute, straighten your bottom leg, and do this. You don't want this to buckle. As soon as they buckle, they round their hips under and it becomes very difficult to do. So let's do it on the other side just so you can see. So bottom knee, and you're gonna lift. You can even oppose your top leg, bend your knee, oppose that top leg. Now, if you can't hold your leg up at 90, you have a couple options. We can work on locking out and lifting as high as we can before we feel like we're gonna, as high as I can go, and then you can rest it down and you can lift at the same time and rest it down. And that's where you are straight as the focus, locked out as the focus, but not high. The second thing that you can do is lift the knee, right? And stay bent first, and then just straighten, because you know you're not going to be able to hold it for very long, and then straighten and bend. So when you're straight leg lifting, you are lifting pubic bone, breastbone solid, and you're lifting as high as you can. You can go up and down with some speed. You can go up and hold. You can go hold and pulse at the top, but you want to make sure that when you're working that you're locking out that bottom leg at the same time. Your pelvis is two pieces, your iliums have to actually move separately. At the top, straighten and bend. And you can literally just work on straightening and bending. You can do this in side position as well if you'd like to, but just for the sake of working hip flexors, that's super important. I hope you enjoyed your hip flexor tutorial today. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to let us know. If your studio is still having home meetings or Zoom meetings, we would love to actually be a part of any part of your rink or studio or gym's program. And if you need anything from an in-person perspective, we are in the clinic taking full precautions, or we can do a telemedicine video visit to look at your mechanics and give you a complimentary peek at what we need to do for you, and then an individualized home program. Hope to hear from you soon if you need us. Otherwise, stay well.